Hello again. Thank you very much for joining me here on Movie Ninja. Tonight I'm going to be talking about Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, new horror anthology on Netflix. With horror anthologies, there's just something that it feels very loose, it feels very liberating and sort of like free. You're not tethered to an extended storyline that you might not enjoy all the way through. A majority of these are very well honed and very well polished. So you have your trilogy of terror, you have your Qui-Gon, you have, in terms of television, you have Tales from the Dark Side, Twilight Zone. You have horror anthologies, but horror anthologies usually capitalize on and punctuate the concerns of the eras in which they are produced. So with Cabinet of Curiosities, just in general, I was very interested in, because obviously Guillermo del Toro, he has decades worth of work and experience, and the man has earned his accolades, with good reason. He has this incredible ability to maximize on sort of primordial fears and weaknesses of the human condition and display them in such a way that they can be either something particularly mundane, and it starts out as mundane and then it becomes something profound and extravagant, for the most part, So, as of this filming, only the first two episodes have premiered. Lot 36 and Graveyard Rats. Now, with this outset, with the very, very beginning of this series, we start out with a Lot 36 being adapted from a short story by Guillermo del Toro. It was directed by Guillermo Navarro. And bearing in mind everything that I just said about Guillermo del Toro, Lot 36 is mundane. An unsavory man purchases a storage locker and he gets more than he bargained for. I use that very worn out, sort of cliched, sort of description of, oh, okay, you bought something, oh, it turns out, oh, this monkey paw cursed you, or whatnot. I think Guillermo was kind of his worst enemy with this. I think, because when the audience, and I'm familiar with a majority of his work, when it comes to Kronos, The Devil's Backbone, Pan's Labyrinth, the series Strain, the Strain series, which he co-authored and was later adapted into a television series. A very good series. If you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth checking out. And so, to see something like Lot 36, where Tim Blake Nelson plays an obnoxious jerk, and he's just so hateful and corrosive, and if you know anything about how what happens to these types of characters in the horror media, okay, I mean, even I can go into this whole limited spoilers, but I mean, it's just so straightforward. I mean, the way that it kind of the narrative leads the character to the storage unit, what happens in the storage unit, finding a mysterious and prospective buyer for certain articles from the storage unit, and then how it ends. Just, okay, that's okay. It's just so, I used the word mundane earlier. It's just so straightforward. There's nothing really there is something in the narrative tying into how Tim Blake Nelson, how his greed kind of led him down this one path, and how one of the items in the storage unit that he's purchased also has a somewhat connection to greed, kind of. And I know that some people will say, like, I don't think you really saw this movie, Ninja. I didn't really read much about greed. I'm reaching. I'm trying to find some profundity in it, aside from someone just got more than they bargained for. Because yeah, that one is just it's very, very straightforward. The end is just very sudden and blunt, and so I just don't think it worked as well as it probably could have. When you have the name Guillermo del Toro attached to a horror short film, like even if it was just okay, like the story, just the story, I still think in some way he was kind of his worst enemy with this, because I expected so much more. I expected so much more. Now that being said, Guillermo Navarro, it was the pacing was good. The characterization for the teleplay was done very well. Tim Blake Nelson, I mean, he did a wonderful job. He's a great character actor. And so, I mean, you just kind of like, yeah, I can't wait for this guy to kind of get what's coming to him, So I have nothing against the production in and of itself. I just thought that for something based off of a work from Guillermo del Toro, I thought this is very straightforward. It's very simplistic. So that one, but interestingly enough, especially because it's Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, which every single episode is a new curiosity, that I was thinking, okay, we're going to get out the gate. We're going to hit the ground running very, much faster, much harder than we actually, did. Which is it's a little disappointed. So, of the first two episodes, moving on. Of the first two episodes, Graveyard Rats was... I feel it was the superior between the two entries that we have so far. Graveyard Rats is about man, Mr. Maison, and how just he finds himself down on his luck, and he manages to kind of get by with his creditors by one of the most parasitic and unsavory aspects of human endeavors, grave robbery. But, unfortunately, these little infernal vermin, rats, hinder all of his endeavors recently, and so unfortunately, his debtors are not particularly patient. He's like, okay, well, I could get better, I could get better hauls for you. I can get better items for you. But all of the corpses, they're swarming with rats, and he's very much afraid of rats. I don't want to talk too much about graveyard rats, because it was okay, and sort of and once again, I have to sort of bring it back. But just when you compare it to the first short film, because they run about an hour. So compared to Lot 36, Graveyard Rats was much better realized, and I think the story and the direction by Vincenzo Natale was just. Can a man make a dishonest day's living by, robbing the dead? But these little, and the pairing of his, heinous activity with, the characters, because I consider them characters in this particular entry of the rats. When most people think of rats, I say most people. I actually had a pet rat for 3 years. When I was young, much cleaner, much more intelligent, much more organized than people give them credit for, actually. But when most people think of rats, all they think of is disgusting vermin. And that's where Mr. Maison, who, like, he has mentioned that he's had a fall from grace of sorts. And now he finds himself, with this terrible, like means of income. And also he has to share this environment with what he finds just disgusting vermin. That's all he considers, like, these rats. Even though he doesn't really differentiate what he's actually doing, as something that is, like, heinous, even though he considers it mostly practical. Like I said, before I go on too much, and before I run the risk of ruining, Graveyard Rats, so far, I find that to be the superior of the first 2 episodes that have premiered so far on Netflix. It seems like the total will be 8 episodes, but they are being slowly distributed on Netflix. I think about 2 a day until October 31st. So we have a few more days of this, and I'm really excited to see some of these directors come to sort of display their talents with the horror genre. The writing, I will say this, even though I didn't particularly find Lot 36 very scary or particularly like anything new, I suppose. It didn't wow me the way I was hoping it would. I will say that the writing was still very, it was still very top notch. So, I mean, as far as an adaptation from anything Mr. Del Toro sort of written, I would still say that the writing is fairly decent. So yeah, but yes, I'm looking for, I saw this, and anyone who saw the last episode knows that, okay, a big part of the reason that I do this is for enthusiasm of something. If I have a lot of enthusiasm for something that I've watched, that I've taken in, and I want to get the word out. I want to get the word out to people okay, do you like horror anthologies? Well, you should be checking out Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. So, I highly recommend it. We are still in the month of October, and and this will be a really nice way to sort of end the month, I feel, So, thank you very much for joining me here on Movie Ninja, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.